Emma had just finished her shift at the small-town clinic, where she worked as a volunteer medic. The sun was slowly dipping toward the horizon, painting the streets with a warm, golden light. It was one of those quiet afternoons when the world seemed calm, almost too calm. She loved these moments, the gentle breeze, the distant laughter of children playing, and the smell of fresh bread from the nearby bakery. But that calm would not last. As she walked home, her mind wandered to the little things she had to do once she got there. Tidying up, checking on her neighbor's cat, maybe calling her best friend. She felt safe. After all, her town was small and everyone knew each other. Trouble was something that happened somewhere else, not on streets like these. Emma's footsteps echoed softly as she turned onto a narrow side street, the kind she always avoided after dark. But today it was still daylight and she didn't think twice. Then, without warning, a roar of motorcycles shattered the peace. From around the corner, a gang of bikers appeared, their engines growling like wild animals. Emma froze, her heart pounding. She could feel her pulse in her throat. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down one side of his face, stared at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. His friends, equally menacing, flanked him, forming a rough wall of leather, tattoos, and cold stares. Emma realized immediately that this was no casual encounter. These were people who thrived on intimidation, on the fear of others. One of the bikers stepped closer, and Emma instinctively took a step back, bumping into the rough brick wall behind her. The leader's voice cut through the air, low and threatening. "Let's see how brave you really are," he sneered. His tone made it clear that he was testing her, looking for weakness. Fear surged through her body, but somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark of determination ignited. Emma had faced fear before. Not like this, certainly. Not in a calm town street. But she had been trained to stay aware, to notice details, to calculate her chances even when her heart raced. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, though her hands trembled slightly. The biker moved even closer, and the crowd of onlookers that had gathered on the sidewalk didn't know what to do. Some whispered among themselves, while others stood frozen, glued by fear. Emma noticed them, realizing that no help would come from this group. The responsibility to protect herself rested entirely on her shoulders. Then came the sudden, horrifying moment. The biker lunged, grabbing at her with a forceful hand. In a swift, careless motion, he tore at her shirt. The fabric ripped, and for a brief, shocking second, Emma felt completely exposed. It was humiliating, terrifying, and confusing all at once. The crowd gasped, some looking away, unable to watch. Emma's mind screamed at her to move, to fight, to run. But her body felt momentarily frozen, caught between instinct and fear. But in that terrifying instant, something inside Emma clicked. She remembered the years of discipline she had cultivated, training that had taught her to stay calm under pressure. She focused on her breathing in and out, slow and deliberate. Her eyes scanned the bikers, noting the leader's stance, the angles, the distance between them. Every second mattered, and she couldn't afford to panic. Even as the biker's hand lingered, Emma subtly shifted her body, trying to create space without making sudden moves. She kept her voice calm, even though it shook slightly. "What do you want?" she asked, her words steady, measured. The biker sneered, enjoying the moment of fear he had created. But he did not yet realize that Emma was far from an ordinary victim. Time seemed to stretch. Every passing second was a mix of terror and calculation. Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Escape routes, potential distractions, ways to use her surroundings to her advantage. The brick wall behind her, the uneven pavement, even the parked cars down the street. All of it became part of her mental map, a plan forming piece by piece. And then, in the midst of all this fear and tension, a spark of clarity. Emma realized that she had to wait for the right moment. A single wrong move could make things worse. She couldn't overpower them by force. Not yet. But she could use the uncertainty, the hesitation that often came with confrontation, to her advantage. The leader finally leaned in, his face close to hers, thinking he had the upper hand. But Emma did not flinch. Her eyes, steady and unyielding, met his. There was a silent warning in her gaze, a calm strength he could not yet understand. For the first time, the biker hesitated just slightly. It was enough. In that moment, Emma's story had already begun. Not with violence, but with courage, awareness, and the quiet power of staying calm when fear threatened to take over. The scene on the street was set, and everything that would follow, from the gang's reaction to the mysterious eagle tattoo on her back, was about to unfold. But right now, in this tense, heart-pounding moment, Emma had proven something vital. Fear was not yet the victor. She was. The street felt heavy with tension. Emma could sense the fear radiating from the small crowd that had gathered around. People stopped in their tracks, unsure whether to step in or stay back. Their hesitation was almost tangible, a silent wall separating her from help. Some reached for their phones, probably intending to call the police, but even that small action seemed delayed by uncertainty. No one moved toward the bikers. No one dared to intervene. Emma's heart sank for a moment as she realized she could not rely on anyone else. She was on her own. Fear threatened to take over, but Emma fought to keep it at bay. She focused on her breathing, in and out, counting silently to 10 with each inhale and exhale. She reminded herself that panic would only make the situation worse. Every second she remained calm was a second closer to survival. Emma scanned the bikers carefully, noting the leader's body language, the slight twitch of his fingers on the throttle, the way the others mirrored his movements. Each detail was important. The crowd, meanwhile, seemed paralyzed by the unexpected violence. Some whispered to each other in hushed tones, unsure if speaking up might provoke the bikers. Others stared wide-eyed, frozen like statues, silently judging themselves for not acting. Emma felt a mix of frustration and pity for them. She knew instinctively that her own training and past experiences were what set her apart in this moment. Ordinary fear gripped ordinary people, but she had faced danger before. The biker leader took a deliberate step closer, trying to assert his dominance. He was testing her, like a predator observing prey, searching for weakness. Emma instinctively moved a fraction of an inch backward, careful not to give him the upper hand or appear panicked. She was trapped between the wall and the gang, but she refused to let that corner her completely. Every movement had to be calculated, every decision precise. Her mind raced through options. Fighting them head-on was impossible. There were too many, and she had no weapons. Running could be dangerous, too. A wrong move might provoke them further. She needed to find a way to create hesitation, to make them rethink their attack without making herself vulnerable. Emma knew that fear, when used strategically, could be more powerful than brute strength. In that moment, she remembered a lesson drilled into her during her rescue training. Confidence is a weapon. Even when physically weaker, appearing unshakable can change the dynamics of a dangerous encounter. She straightened her posture, lifted her chin slightly, and met the leader's gaze directly. Her calm eyes sent a subtle message. She was not an ordinary victim, and she could not be underestimated. The biker leader tilted his head, noticing her composure. He expected trembling or pleading, but instead he saw calm determination. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, though he quickly masked it with a smirk. The others, sensing his hesitation, mirrored it. The energy in the group shifted slightly, just enough for Emma to realize she could use it to her advantage. Emma's mind worked quickly. She calculated distances, angles, and timing. The uneven pavement beneath their boots could be used if she needed to sidestep or pivot. The parked cars along the street could provide cover or an obstacle if she chose to move suddenly. Even the brick wall behind her, which had felt like a trap a moment ago, could serve as leverage if she needed to push off it for a quick maneuver. Her environment, which seemed ordinary to the bystanders, was now a map for her survival strategy. While the bikers debated their next move, Emma subtly shifted her weight from one foot to the other, creating a slight readiness in her stance. Her movements were small, but intentional, signaling that she was alert and ready to respond. Every tiny action, every glance, every breath was designed to keep her in control despite the chaos around her. The crowd's uncertainty continued to play a role. Some began to murmur, questioning what they should do. Their inaction, however, reinforced Emma's resolve. She understood that waiting for outside help might not be an option, at least not immediately. She had to be ready to act alone. But even as fear lingered at the edges of her mind, she felt a spark of confidence growing. She was not powerless. She had faced far worse, and the bikers were about to discover that. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally as the bikers lingered in their intimidation. Emma, however, saw the cracks forming in their confidence. The leader's overconfidence was beginning to waver. The other bikers hesitated as well, unsure if they should follow blindly. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, a tiny opening in the wall of aggression that could be exploited. Emma realized that surviving this encounter required patience as much as courage. She did not need to confront them with force. She needed to let their own hesitation work against them. By staying calm, maintaining control over her body language, and observing every detail, she began to turn the psychological tables. Fear had been used to trap her, but now it could be turned into her ally. In that tense street, the ordinary crowd watched silently, unaware of the invisible battle being waged between a trained operative and a gang of dangerous bikers. Emma's mind was a whirlwind of strategy, yet her demeanor remained composed. Every heartbeat brought her closer to the moment when the tide would shift, when the hesitation she had sown in the bikers' minds would become her advantage. And so, with calm eyes, steady breathing, and calculated awareness, Emma held her ground. The bikers had thought they could scare her, but they were beginning to realize that fear alone would not dictate the outcome. She had turned a moment of terror into a moment of opportunity, setting the stage for what would soon reveal her true strength and the secret hidden in the eagle tattoo that no one had yet seen. The tension on the street had reached a point where every second felt heavier than the last. Emma's mind was sharp, her senses alert to every movement of the bikers. Their growling engines and harsh voices filled the air. But through it all, she remained calm, carefully observing her surroundings. It was then that something unexpected happened. A small shift in posture revealed part of her back, and with it, a glimpse of a tattoo that most people would never have seen. The tattoo was an eagle, etched across her shoulder blade, its wings spread wide as if in mid-flight. Its sharp eyes seemed to pierce through anyone who looked at it. This was not just a piece of art. It carried meaning far beyond the surface. To the ordinary person, it might have seemed like a striking design, a symbol of courage or freedom. But to those who knew, it was a mark of someone who had been through rigorous training, someone who had faced danger and come out alive, someone who was capable of defending herself in ways most could not imagine. The moment the eagle tattoo was revealed, a subtle change swept across the biker leader's face. His sneer faltered, replaced by a flicker of recognition and something else, hesitation. His hand, which had been so aggressive moments before, hovered uncertainly. The other bikers glanced at him, noticing the shift, unsure of what it meant. In that brief moment, the power dynamic on the street began to change. Emma, noticing the reaction, did not panic. She knew exactly what she had just done, even if the gang did not. The eagle was more than decoration. It was a silent warning, a symbol of experience and skill that spoke volumes without a single word being uttered. Her posture remained strong, her gaze steady, as she subtly adjusted her stance, showing that she was aware of every movement and ready to act if necessary. The bikers exchanged glances, the leader's doubt spreading like ripples through the group. They had assumed she was an easy target, someone who could be intimidated, perhaps even overpowered. But now, with that tattoo revealed, their assumptions began to crumble. Emma could see the uncertainty creeping into their body language, the slight hesitation in their steps, the quick glances toward each other as if silently asking, "Do we really know what we're dealing with?" For Emma, the tattoo was not a tool of intimidation in the conventional sense. It was a symbol of her life before this quiet town, a life that few could understand. She had been trained to survive, trained to assess threats instantly, trained to act decisively. The eagle represented all of that: strength, vigilance, and the ability to rise above danger. And now, in this tense confrontation, it was doing its work silently, reshaping the situation without a word being spoken. The leader's eyes lingered on the eagle, scanning every detail as if trying to read the story behind it. Emma could feel the shift in his energy, the confidence that had been his strongest weapon now wavering. The others in the gang mirrored his uncertainty. The once aggressive posture of the group was softening, replaced by caution. Emma's heart remained steady, though adrenaline coursed through her veins. She knew that the tattoo alone had bought her time, but the situation was not over. Every second still mattered, and any mistake could trigger renewed aggression. Even as the bikers hesitated, the crowd around them remained frozen, unsure whether to intervene or stay back. Some murmured to each other, noticing the sudden change in the bikers' demeanor but unable to understand why. Emma, however, had no doubt. She could feel the weight of experience behind her tattoo, a silent force that made the bikers reconsider their actions. It was as if an invisible line had been drawn, one that warned them not to underestimate her. Emma subtly shifted again, this time slightly turning her body to show more of the tattoo without making it obvious. She was careful, maintaining control over her movements so as not to provoke them. Her eyes locked with the leaders, conveying calm confidence. She did not speak. Words were unnecessary. The eagle on her back had already spoken louder than any threat she could issue. The bikers, now visibly uncertain, began to glance at the street around them, almost subconsciously reassessing the situation. They had thought themselves in control, but suddenly they felt exposed. Emma's calmness and the symbolism of her tattoo created a silent tension, a mental game that shifted the balance. The leader's hand twitched, perhaps considering retreat or perhaps trying to maintain authority, but the hesitation was there, undeniable. Emma felt a quiet surge of satisfaction. She had turned what seemed like a hopeless situation into an advantage, all through a symbol that told a story of skill, courage, and experience. The eagle tattoo had not just revealed her identity, it had changed the atmosphere entirely. The bikers no longer appeared as fearless predators. They now seemed cautious, unsure, and slightly intimidated. In that moment, Emma understood something important. Strength was not always about fighting or shouting. Sometimes it was about presence, about awareness, and about signaling to others that they had underestimated you. The eagle tattoo had done exactly that, transforming fear into hesitation and hesitation into opportunity. The confrontation had shifted subtly but significantly, and Emma remained in full control of her reactions, ready for whatever the bikers would do next. The street, once tense with imminent danger, now hung in a fragile pause. Emma's eyes never left the leader, knowing that the next moments would determine how the situation would unfold. The eagle tattoo, a symbol of her past, had silently spoken to everyone present, and it had already begun to shape the outcome in ways the bikers could not yet fully understand. The moment the eagle tattoo revealed itself, the leader of the biker gang froze. For a heartbeat, everything around Emma seemed to slow down. The roar of engines, the murmur of the crowd, even the wind, all faded into the background as the leader's attention fixed entirely on the intricate design on her shoulder blade. His eyes widened slightly, and the sneer that had dominated his face moments ago vanished. It was replaced by a look of shock, recognition, and, unexpectedly, caution. The other bikers noticed the sudden change in their leader. They had been following his confidence blindly, assuming that he always knew what he was doing. But when they saw him hesitate, a ripple of uncertainty passed through the group. The smallest crack in the armor of authority can unsettle even the most aggressive, and this crack was unmistakable. Emma felt her pulse quicken, but not with fear. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She had created a pause, a window of opportunity, and she intended to use it wisely. The leader's gaze lingered on the eagle. To the untrained eye, it was just a tattoo, a piece of art. But to him, it spoke volumes. The eagle was a symbol of elite training, of someone who had faced danger, of someone who could turn any situation into survival. It was the mark of a person who had been through things most people couldn't even imagine. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by doubt. He whispered something under his breath, probably a warning to his gang, but his voice lacked the authority it had held moments before. Emma stood tall, her body relaxed yet ready. She didn't move hastily, because she didn't need to. The tattoo had already done its work, silently communicating her capabilities, her past, and her potential to defend herself. It was as though the eagle itself had spoken a silent message to the leader. Do not underestimate me. That unspoken warning was more powerful than any words she could have uttered. The hesitation of the leader spread quickly. The bikers exchanged uncertain glances, their confidence faltering. Their once bold movements became tentative. Emma noticed the subtle changes, the slight shift in stance, the half-step backward, the nervous tapping of fingers on the bike handles. They were no longer the unstoppable force she had first encountered. They were cautious, unsure, hesitant. And that hesitation was exactly what Emma needed. Despite the shift, Emma remained vigilant. She knew the danger was far from over. The bikers were still strong, potentially violent, and unpredictable. But the balance had shifted. She could sense their calculation. Do we really know what we're dealing with? It was a question that hung in the air, unspoken but loud in the tension around her. Emma understood that even the most intimidating opponents can falter when confronted with someone who radiates control and skill. The eagle tattoo wasn't just a symbol, it was a declaration. It declared that Emma had survived and thrived in situations far more dangerous than this. It declared that she was not an ordinary person to be pushed around. And it declared that any attack against her would come at a cost they hadn't anticipated. The leader's pause and the gang's uncertainty confirmed that the message had been received. Emma's mind raced through the next steps. She didn't need to fight them yet. She only needed to maintain the upper hand psychologically. Every movement she made, subtle as it was, reinforced her calm and readiness. She adjusted her posture slightly, keeping her weight balanced, signaling that she was alert. She met the leader's eyes steadily, letting her calm determination speak louder than words. The leader, still focused on the tattoo, didn't notice the quiet, strategic stance she had taken. Ready to react, ready to exploit any misstep. The crowd watched in a mix of awe and fear. They sensed the change even if they didn't fully understand it. What had started as a terrifying confrontation now carried a new energy. The bikers were no longer predators confidently closing in. They were cautious, calculating, unsure. Emma had shifted the dynamic without raising her voice, without throwing a punch, without making a dramatic move. A simple, symbolic mark, the eagle tattoo, had transformed the situation. For Emma, the pause was a gift. It bought her precious time, and in dangerous moments, time is everything. She could now think more clearly, plan her next moves, and ensure that the confrontation would end in her favor. The leader's hesitation, while subtle, was enough to prevent immediate escalation. Even if the bikers still intended to intimidate her, the psychological advantage had already swung to her side. The leader's whisper to his gang went unanswered at first. They were frozen, waiting for guidance that didn't come. Emma noticed the subtle exchanges, glances, slight nods, and even tiny shakes of the head. Confusion was replacing aggression. Fear, previously unspoken, was now creeping in, not because of brute force but because they sensed they had underestimated their target. In that delicate moment, Emma realized how much power symbols can hold. The eagle tattoo, an emblem she had earned through her past experiences, had become a silent shield and sword simultaneously. It had stopped the biker's aggression cold, forcing him and his gang to reassess. Emma's fear had not been defeated yet, but the threat had been neutralized, at least temporarily, by the power of recognition, respect, and psychological leverage. The street remained tense but quieter. The bikers were still there, but the energy had shifted. Emma's heart beat steadily, her senses sharpened, and she prepared for whatever came next. She had turned a terrifying confrontation into a calculated pause, buying herself time and space. The eagle tattoo had spoken on her behalf, and the leader had listened. At that moment, Emma understood something vital. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't force, but perception. Confidence, experience, and symbols of strength can alter even the most dangerous situations. And in this quiet yet intense standoff, The eagle tattoo had done exactly that, setting the stage for what would happen next. The street had grown quiet in a strange, tense way. The roar of the motorcycles had faded into the background, leaving only the subtle sounds of breathing, shuffling feet, and the distant hum of the town. Emma's heart was steady, her mind sharp. She could feel the shift in the biker's energy. The aggression that had once seemed overwhelming had softened into hesitation. The eagle tattoo on her shoulder had worked like a signal, sending a message that these were not ordinary people, and now the next steps were all about timing and subtlety. Emma knew that panic or sudden movement could ruin the advantage she had created. She couldn't afford to act hastily, and yet she had to create opportunities to ensure her safety. Each step she took, each slight movement of her hands, was deliberate. She shifted her weight slightly from one foot to the other, testing their reactions, maintaining a posture that was calm yet ready. She wanted to show that she was aware of every detail and that she was ready for any sudden move, without provoking them. The biker leader was still focused on the eagle tattoo, trying to process what it meant. Emma realized that his hesitation was the key. By remaining calm and composed, she could influence his decisions, forcing him to doubt himself and the gang's actions. Every subtle movement she made, turning slightly to the side, adjusting her stance, even the way she held her hands, was calculated to reinforce the idea that she was not to be underestimated. Emma's mind raced through possibilities. She considered escape routes, the layout of the street, and even the reactions of the bystanders. The parked cars, the brick wall behind her, and the uneven pavement were all part of her mental map. She knew that if she had to move quickly, these elements could either help her or hinder her, and she prepared herself for both outcomes. The key was control, and for now she held it. The crowd around them remained tense, watching silently, some whispering to each other. They sensed the shift in the bikers' behavior but didn't understand why. Emma noted their hesitation as well. Their fear mirrored the uncertainty she had created in the gang, reinforcing the power of her calm presence. She realized that psychological pressure worked in two directions. It unsettled the attackers and inspired awe and relief in the witnesses. The leader shifted slightly, trying to regain control. His movements were deliberate, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Emma could feel it. It was almost imperceptible, but after years of training, she had learned to notice even the smallest signs. She subtly leaned slightly forward, enough to show readiness without threatening. Her calm confidence was a silent statement. She was aware, prepared, and in command of her reactions. The other bikers, noticing their leader's hesitation, began to second-guess themselves. They had expected easy intimidation, a quick show of dominance. Instead, they found themselves in a silent standoff, unsure of what to do next. Emma could feel the tension radiating from them, the uncertainty mixing with caution. Their body language had softened, their gestures were smaller, and their focus had narrowed onto her in a way that was almost reverent and terrifying at the same time. Emma knew that she had bought herself time, but the next steps were crucial. She needed to keep the bikers off balance while preparing for an eventual escape or intervention. She shifted again, just slightly, showing readiness without aggression. Her eyes stayed locked on the leader, maintaining direct contact. She allowed a faint, calm expression to play on her face, neither smiling nor scowling. The message was clear. She was fully aware, fully in control, and not intimidated. The subtle shift in energy was profound. What had begun as an overwhelming, terrifying confrontation had transformed into a psychological battle. Emma's calm presence and the silent warning of her eagle tattoo had destabilized the gang's confidence. She understood that the moment she let fear show, the balance would tip back in their favor. But by remaining composed, by controlling her movements and her gaze, she could maintain dominance without a single act of violence. Time stretched as the bikers hesitated. Their previous aggression now mingled with uncertainty. Emma's mind ran through various scenarios, calculating which move might provoke them and which would maintain the delicate balance. She realized that she didn't need to force a resolution. The hesitation she had created was already her advantage. She simply had to stay poised, alert and patient. The leader's eyes flicked toward the others in the gang, seeking guidance, but his uncertainty lingered. Emma recognized that their cohesion was fragile now. She subtly shifted her stance again, moving a fraction of an inch backward, as if preparing to take the next step. It was enough to signal awareness, readiness, and strategic calm. The leader noticed, his body stiffening slightly, but he did not act. The street was now a chessboard, with every movement carefully measured. Emma was not just defending herself physically. She was influencing the mental state of her attackers. Each moment of hesitation she inspired was a victory, each small sign of control reinforcing her dominance. The bikers were still a threat, but they were no longer untouchable, no longer entirely in control. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment but also the power she now held. She had managed to turn fear into leverage, hesitation into opportunity. Her eagle tattoo had done its silent work, and now her calm, precise movements continued that work. She had not yet made her next move, but she had laid the groundwork for safety and survival. In this tense, silent standoff, Emma realized something fundamental. Courage and strategy were more powerful than brute force. By staying calm, aware, and deliberate, she had shifted the balance of power. The bikers had expected fear, but instead, they found control and confidence. Emma's next actions would determine the outcome, but for now, she had already gained the upper hand. The biker gang's energy had shifted completely. What had once been aggressive, confident, and terrifying now trembled with doubt. Emma could feel it in every subtle movement, the slight hesitation in their steps, the nervous glance exchanged between members, the faint tightening of fists that had once been cocky and ready to attack. It was as if the wind itself had changed direction, and she was now standing with it at her back, poised and unshakable. The leader, who had dominated the group's energy from the start, was now noticeably off balance. His eyes flicked nervously toward the others, searching for reassurance, but the hesitation he saw reflected back at him. The group's cohesion was breaking apart. Emma realized that the small cracks in confidence she had noticed earlier were widening. The eagle tattoo on her shoulder had done more than just surprise him. It had planted a seed of doubt, and now that seed was growing into hesitation that threatened to topple their authority. Each biker's body language told the story. One shifted his weight repeatedly, as if unsure of what to do next. Another adjusted the collar of his leather jacket, a nervous, unconscious gesture. Even the loudest, bulliest member's hand hovered over his bike handle, frozen mid-motion. Emma had learned long ago that uncertainty can be more dangerous than aggression. A hesitant enemy can make mistakes that a confident one would never consider. And mistakes in this situation could work entirely in her favor. Emma remained calm, her stance relaxed but alert. She did not want to provoke the gang into a rash decision, yet she needed to maintain control over the moment. Her subtle movements, a slight shift of her shoulders, a measured step backward, a deep, steadying breath, communicated awareness and readiness without aggression. She had discovered that in a standoff, calm confidence can feel far more threatening than a physical fight. It was a silent power, one that the bikers were already feeling. The leader tried to assert himself again, his voice low and tense. He issued a command to the gang, attempting to regain dominance. But Emma could see that his words lacked conviction. The others hesitated, waiting for the signal that no longer carried certainty. That single moment of doubt spread like a ripple through the group. The gang was now reacting to the leader's uncertainty rather than to Emma's actions, which meant that her influence over the situation had become even stronger. Emma noticed a subtle exchange of glances between two bikers. Their eyes widened slightly, and a faint nod passed between them. An unspoken acknowledgement that they had underestimated her. They were beginning to reconsider their choices, aware now that this encounter might not be as simple as they had assumed. The sense of invincibility that had carried them to this street had vanished, replaced by caution and calculation. Emma had seen this before. When confidence falters, fear begins to creep in. Despite the growing uncertainty, Emma remained vigilant. She knew better than to let her guard down. The bikers were still dangerous, and their hesitation did not guarantee safety. But it had given her something even more valuable: time. Time to observe, time to plan, time to turn the psychological advantage she had gained into a path toward resolution. Every second she remained poised added to her leverage. She subtly shifted again, leaning slightly forward, signaling readiness without aggression. Her eyes stayed locked on the leader, maintaining a quiet but powerful connection. The leader's gaze faltered under the intensity of her calm. He had expected fear, flinching, pleading, anything but this composed, alert, and unshakable presence. The realization that they had underestimated her seemed to weigh heavily on him. As the tension stretched on, Emma's mind evaluated every potential move. She calculated escape routes, options for de-escalation, and ways to use the environment, the uneven pavement, the parked cars, the narrow street, to her advantage if necessary. She understood that psychological dominance could now dictate the outcome just as much as physical action. The biker's doubt was her ally, and she needed to maintain it carefully. The group's hesitation grew even more when one of the bikers made a slight misstep. It was subtle, almost invisible to an untrained eye, but Emma noticed it instantly. The biker's foot slipped slightly on the pavement, causing him to lose balance for a fraction of a second. That small mistake sent a shockwave of uncertainty through the others. The leader's eyes flickered with concern, and Emma saw the moment she had been waiting for. The first real crack in their aggression. The realization struck Emma clearly. Their confidence had been built on the assumption that she was ordinary, unprepared, and vulnerable. That assumption had been shattered by her calm presence and the eagle tattoo. They had expected fear, but instead they found composure, awareness, and a quiet but undeniable strength. Their hesitation was proof that perception could be more powerful than force. Emma's careful observation continued. Every twitch of a finger, every glance, every small adjustment in stance gave her insight into the gang's state of mind. She could feel that the energy on the street had changed completely. No longer were they predators advancing toward a victim. They were cautious, calculating, second-guessing each other, and weighing the risks of further aggression. The psychological advantage was hers. In that tense moment, Emma realized something essential. Control doesn't always come from strength or numbers. It comes from calm, awareness, and the ability to influence others without confrontation. The bikers had been trained to intimidate, to provoke fear, but their own uncertainty had now trapped them in a position of vulnerability. Emma had turned the confrontation into a standoff where the balance of power was entirely in her favor, without needing to strike a single blow. Even as the bikers tried to regain composure, Emma's quiet confidence held them in check. Each hesitant movement reinforced her advantage. Each glance she returned amplified their doubt. The street that had seemed dangerous moments ago now belonged to her, at least psychologically. She was aware of the danger, but she also knew that she had created the conditions to manage it. Emma understood that the next moments were crucial. The biker's hesitation was an opportunity to secure safety, to end the confrontation without violence, and to maintain control until help could arrive. She stayed alert, ready to act if necessary, but she also allowed the silence and doubt to work in her favor. The psychological upper hand had shifted completely, and Emma's calm, poised presence had made all the difference. The tension on the street was almost unbearable. Emma could feel the hesitation radiating from the biker gang, but she knew better than to relax completely. The moment had shifted in her favor, yes, but danger was still very real. Every small movement mattered. Her eyes scanned the street and the crowd, aware of every sound. The faint rumble of engines, the nervous whispers of bystanders, and the scuff of a boot on the uneven pavement. Every detail could provide a clue. Every detail could make the difference between safety and harm. Suddenly, a distant sound reached her ears. The unmistakable hum of approaching vehicles. Her senses sharpened. It was the local security patrol, alerted by bystanders who had finally summoned help. Emma could feel a flicker of hope mixed with caution. She did not make a move immediately. Instead, she allowed the bikers to notice the approaching presence. It was a test, one last observation to gauge their reaction. The bikers' demeanor changed instantly. Their subtle uncertainty morphed into a more tangible nervousness. The leader glanced quickly over his shoulder, his jaw tightening. He muttered something to his group, but his voice lacked the authority it had once carried. The patrol's arrival had introduced an unpredictable variable, a force that could intervene and tip the scales against them. The gang, who had begun to hesitate at Emma's quiet confidence, now faced another reason to question their choices. Emma's mind raced. She knew that the patrol's arrival didn't guarantee safety yet. The bikers were still dangerous, and desperate people can make rash decisions. But this was an opportunity. Her calm presence, combined with the symbolic power of her eagle tattoo, had already sown doubt. Now, with help physically arriving, the balance was shifting even further. The bikers had to reassess whether their plan of intimidation was worth continuing. She subtly shifted her weight, positioning herself slightly to the side, ensuring she had an unobstructed path toward safety if needed. Every movement was deliberate. She maintained eye contact with the leader, who now seemed caught between asserting authority and retreating. The rest of the gang mirrored his hesitation, looking toward the street and the approaching patrol as if silently weighing the risk of staying versus fleeing. The patrol vehicles slowed as they approached, and a few officers stepped forward cautiously. Their presence was deliberate but confident, projecting authority without unnecessary aggression. Emma noticed how the bikers' glances flicked repeatedly between her, the patrol, and the open street. The psychological weight of being confronted simultaneously by someone who had already unsettled them and by law enforcement was beginning to overwhelm their confidence. Emma realized she had created the perfect moment. The bikers were no longer unified, no longer certain, and most importantly, no longer willing to risk a direct confrontation. She allowed herself a brief, controlled exhale, feeling the tension ease just slightly. The patrol's eyes met hers for a moment, a silent acknowledgement that help had arrived. Emma did not need to act recklessly. The situation had evolved in her favor. The leader of the gang made a subtle motion, a signal to the others. There was a tense pause as if waiting for a response that didn't come immediately. Emma could see the fear creeping into their body language, the backs stiffening, fingers twitching nervously, eyes darting for escape routes. Their earlier bravado had evaporated. The gang, which had thought themselves in control moments ago, now faced a moment of truth. Confront the patrol and risk arrest or worse, or retreat and save themselves. One by one, the bikers began to move. The leader hesitated the longest, but even he finally gave a curt nod. Emma watched carefully, ready to react if they attempted anything reckless. But instead, the bikers slowly backed away, some glancing at her as if acknowledging the unexpected strength she had shown. The eagle tattoo, her calm confidence, and the timely arrival of the patrol had combined to turn the tide. What had begun as a threatening confrontation ended in retreat. The patrol officers approached closer, keeping a safe distance from the retreating gang. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she remained alert. She knew that danger had not completely vanished. Street encounters can change in an instant, but she also recognized that she had used every advantage she had to ensure her safety. The gang's retreat was proof of the power of preparation, composure, and psychological strategy. As the bikers disappeared down the street, Emma allowed herself a moment to assess what had just happened. The crowd, previously frozen in fear, began to breathe again, murmurs of relief spreading through them. Some of the bystanders looked at her with awe, others with curiosity. Emma smiled faintly, keeping her posture calm but relaxed. She had not sought attention, but the outcome had naturally drawn eyes to her courage and skill. Emma's reflection was simple but profound. She had faced a dangerous situation alone, and by remaining calm, aware, and deliberate, she had neutralized the threat without escalating violence. Her eagle tattoo, a symbol of her past and her strength, had done more than represent who she was. It had sent an unmistakable warning to the bikers that she was not to be underestimated. Combined with her awareness and timing, it had allowed her to control the situation, even under extreme pressure. The security patrol began to engage the crowd, ensuring that everyone remained safe and that the bikers did not return. Emma stepped slightly back, allowing the officers to take control of the scene. She remained poised, her eyes scanning the street one last time to ensure the threat had truly passed. Even as relief flooded through her, she maintained her awareness. Experience had taught her that vigilance is always necessary until a situation is completely resolved. The lesson of the encounter was clear. Courage, composure, and awareness can turn the tide in moments of extreme danger. Emma had not relied on brute force alone. She had relied on her training, her calm presence, and the power of perception. The eagle tattoo had done its silent work, the biker's hesitation had given her leverage, and the timely arrival of the patrol had secured her safety. Together, these elements had transformed a terrifying moment into a story of strategic resilience and survival. The street was finally quiet. The roar of motorcycles had faded, the tension in the air slowly dissipating, and the crowd that had been frozen in fear began to relax. Emma stood there for a moment, catching her breath, feeling the cool evening air against her skin. She could feel her heart still beating fast, but the fear that had gripped her moments ago had transformed into a quiet sense of relief. The danger had passed, but the experience left a deep impression on her, one that she would carry with her long after the bikers had disappeared into the distance. Emma's eagle tattoo, which had played such a pivotal role in the encounter, seemed to have taken on an almost symbolic power in her mind. It wasn't just an image etched on her skin. It was a representation of her past, her strength, and her resilience. The tattoo had silently communicated to the bikers that she was not someone to be trifled with, that she had faced challenges far more dangerous than this small-town confrontation, and that she was capable of protecting herself. Its impact had been immediate and undeniable, altering the course of the encounter without a single word being spoken. The crowd of bystanders, who had witnessed the entire episode, began to murmur among themselves. Some of them stared at Emma in awe, clearly impressed by her calmness and presence of mind. Others whispered to each other, trying to understand how a lone woman had managed to hold off a gang of intimidating bikers without fighting or fleeing. They did not know the full story behind the tattoo or her past experiences, but they could feel the confidence and control she had projected. Emma realized that actions often speak louder than words, and sometimes the smallest details, a steady gaze, a composed posture, a symbolic tattoo, can have the greatest impact. As the local security patrol began to engage with the crowd and ensure that the bikers did not return, Emma stepped back slightly, letting the officers take the lead. She observed them carefully, maintaining awareness of her surroundings even as relief settled over her. Experience had taught her that danger is rarely completely gone until every possible risk has been accounted for. She remained alert, scanning the street and the surrounding area for any signs of returning threats, while also processing what had just happened. Emma reflected on the series of choices she had made during the encounter. Every step, every measured movement, every subtle shift in her posture had been deliberate. She had relied not on brute force, but on awareness, composure, and psychological strategy. Her calm demeanor had unsettled the bikers, creating hesitation that she could exploit. The eagle tattoo had reinforced her message of strength and experience, acting as a silent signal that communicated far more than words could have. By combining these elements, she had been able to turn a terrifying situation into one where she retained control and secured her own safety. The lesson was clear. Courage is not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, and strategic. Emma's strength had come from her ability to remain composed under pressure, to assess her surroundings quickly, and to use every element at her disposal. Her body language, her awareness, her history, and even the symbolic power of her tattoo, to influence the outcome. In that moment, she realized how much of survival depends on mindset and perception, not just physical power. As the crowd began to disperse, Emma took a moment to acknowledge the gratitude and admiration in some of their eyes. While she had not sought recognition, the reaction of the onlookers was a reminder of the impact a single person can have when they remain composed and decisive in the face of danger. Even without confrontation or combat, she had demonstrated authority and control, turning the potential chaos of the encounter into a managed situation. Emma's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the significance of the eagle tattoo in her life. It had been earned through years of experience, discipline, and resilience. It was a mark of her identity, of who she was beneath the surface, and now it had served a vital purpose in a real-life situation. The tattoo had not just signaled strength to the bikers. It had reminded Emma herself of her capabilities, grounding her in confidence at a moment when fear could have easily taken over. She considered the broader implications of the encounter. In a small town, it was rare for a dangerous situation like this to occur, but it had served as a stark reminder that danger can appear unexpectedly, and that preparation, mental, emotional, and strategic, is always essential. Emma's training, experience, and calm presence had been tested, and she had passed. But she also recognized that luck, timing, and the arrival of external help, the security patrol, had played a role in ensuring the outcome was positive. As she began to walk home, Emma felt a quiet sense of pride mixed with humility. She had faced a real threat, had navigated it successfully, and had done so without unnecessary risk or confrontation. The bikers' retreat, the crowd's awe, and her own reflections all reinforced a vital truth. True strength lies not in dominating others, but in maintaining control over oneself, using awareness and composure to influence outcomes, and leveraging the tools at one's disposal, whether physical, symbolic, or psychological. By the time she reached the familiar streets of her neighborhood, the adrenaline had begun to fade, replaced by a calm, steady sense of accomplishment. She knew that life would continue, challenges would arise, and unexpected threats might appear again. But she also knew that she had the skills, the presence of mind, and the inner strength to face them. The eagle tattoo, a symbol of her past and her resilience, had reminded her, and now the world around her, of that truth. Emma's encounter that evening became more than just a story of survival. It was a testament to the power of calm, awareness, and strategy. It demonstrated that courage can be quiet but effective, that symbols can carry real influence, and that true strength is as much about psychological mastery as it is about physical ability. She had faced fear, used it to her advantage, and emerged not only safe but empowered. The experience would stay with her forever, a reminder that even in the face of danger, control, calm, and confidence can make all the difference.